Tim, thanks so much for stopping by. I know you're probably perhaps the most busy person at the conference.
Actually, I have a lot of people doing a lot of things. I'm just floating. So, it's just making sure that everything's running.
Awesome. How are things going so far from your perspective?
It's been great. This is like the biggest theatrical production that we've ever put on. So, that's been really interesting. Little secret, I've got on-stage acting work to do tomorrow, which will be pretty cool. I've never done that before with a live, audience. So, fun stuff.
So when you guys came up with the theme, what was the inspiration for the Oz?
This one writes itself, right? What do you need to be a good fundraiser? A heart, a brain, the nerve. You know what I mean? So this is one that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and it was really fun to be able to make it happen.
Nice, awesome. What does success look like? This thing is over, it's done in a day and a half. What do you hope?
I just think every person walks out of here with one thing that they can go try.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like the message that comes from the stage, from all the presenters. They're really just trying to inspire people to get outside of their comfort zone and just try something, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully that creates a nice backdrop. And, with the expo floor and everybody kind of moving around, I'm hoping that that's where some of the conversations land.
Yeah, totally. I was talking to someone earlier, and my favorite thing about the conference is it's always so practical. You go to a lot of nonprofit conferences, and it's just big concepts or more theory.
Right.
But I love it's you're stepping into a lab and learning from all the experimentation that's happening, with your guys' research and other organizations. And so is that the goal for it, to be really practical, or is that just kind of the outcome by who's here and who's invited?
Yeah, I think we have to have the mixture between both the strategic kind of orientation, but then also giving people specific tactical things they can start to hang on their own program. And so I think this year we've got a good mix of some of that stuff. A lot of the speakers, especially the guy who's going to close down tonight, Marcus Sheridan, it's going to be a lot of kind of really important theory, but he'll also kind of hang some practical stuff. The guy used to be a pool guy.
Oh, wow.
And was one of the most successful in-ground pool guys in the country, because when his business was going off a cliff, he turned to the internet. And it saved him. So it was pretty cool.
Wow, awesome. Can't wait to hear that.
Yeah.
So you guys work with a lot of big nonprofits. There's lots of questions floating around the industry. Is an impending recession going to impact us? How is it going to impact giving? Are there any early indicators that giving may slow down in Q4 or in 2023? Any insider thoughts that you guys?
It's definitely something we've been paying attention to and thinking about. One of the things that we're starting to run experiments around is longitudinal retention, right? Because I think especially as you enter into a down economy, retention becomes the new donor acquisition.
Yeah.
And I think you've heard a lot of that stuff too from the stage today. I think the other thing that we're seeing is not just the economy, but also just the privacy wars with all the major kind of walled garden advertising players, and they're squeezing out a lot of our audience, which is making it really hard and more expensive, quite frankly, to go and reach and acquire donors. So I think retention is going to be a big focus for a lot of organizations, especially
absolutely.
in the next couple of years.
It's still so crazy. It's 50-something% retention rate, right? For most
at best, right? Which is a coin flip,
And it was just, because you would think that addressing that first will inherently increase growth, or make your growth more probable. And so it'll be interesting if that's one of the outcomes of a softer economy, is people already committed and giving, if we find new ways to retain donors better.
Yeah, it's hard. I've talked about this before, but it's I feel we're just so addicted to this direct response mindset, right?
Yeah.
So it's we think of everything in terms of the annual fund, the 12-month window, and although we use terms like long-term value, not a lot of people make decisions based off of that. So what I want to do is try and figure out if there's something we could do to prove, just some of the the more tactical experiments that we perform in our lab, but let's run something over a 12-month period of time and see if there are specific plays that we can run to go affect the retention rate.
Yeah. Is there any insight there, anything that you found that has worked better than others?
Yeah, totally. Here's the cool thing is omni-channel marketing communication is very near. This used to be something that was really not accessible for a lot of nonprofits, but with the emergence of DSPs and 80 million TV households are now on connected TV, which is actually more than traditional television broadcasts. This gives us a whole new way of surrounding the donor in an experience, right? And that's what we're kind of banking on and testing. We've run little smaller term experiments where we're okay, let's go try some different messages in different channels and monitor giving across all channels, over just a year-end campaign window. But I want to look at is over a longer time horizon how that's out.
And one more question on retention.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that smaller organizations, is it easier or harder for smaller organizations to retain donors than big ones?
I mean, if you look at the data, what you typically find is like the smaller the organization, the higher the retention rates are, but that's because they have a smaller overall like corpus of donors, right?
Yeah.
As they start to kind of like move into more mass market acquisition and communication, they're kind of broadening like the bullseye, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so it's really, people that maybe were inspired. They gave out of a visceral response to something, but they're not really as connected as somebody that, maybe went to a fundraising event.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you look at the numbers, that's what we typically see. I think that larger organizations have the greatest opportunity to prove out the model that we could then go start to scale down.
Yeah, that makes
market.
sense.
Yeah.
I asked because, like on the consumer level, I feel like we've been seeing this for at least a decade, but I feel like it's been like exacerbated even more. Where at a consumer level, there's been like a departure from like bigger brands, bigger corporations, more of a focus on like boutique, local. And like, how that impacts sort of giving. Like, are we like more enthusiastic to give to like a smaller, less name brand organization versus I don't know, like American Red Cross or something like that?
Well, I think that the more that we can kind of like shorten the distance between like the donor and like their connection to the social impact delivered through the charity. It's like not like you want to take the charity out of the picture, but just take them out of the way. You know what I mean? And kind of bring that donor closer to that impact.
Awesome, makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, one last question here. Yep. What are you excited for over the next 12 months? What are you guys working on that you're really excited to get out or just to dive more into?
Yeah, I really think that there's some really significant opportunity with omnichannel communication and fundraising. And so we've developed a marketing data warehouse. Like we've had that for several years. We have a number of clients that are in there, and that gives us great business intelligence reports that we can look at and be able to identify where are the different segments of our donors that we need to focus on. The next step is the really exciting part, where we're going to connect that to a DSP, a demand side platform, where we can actually push out specific omni-channel campaigns to specific segments of our donors.
Super interesting.
Yeah, so that's the part that I'm super pumped about, and like we need to have many more conversations around that once I get some data back.
Yeah, I'd love to. All right, quick rapid fire questions, and then we'll wrap it up here. There's no right or wrong answers, but there are some right answers. Okay, first question. For reading, digital or an actual book?
Digital.
What's your most favorite recent book you've read?
It was called, it was a Patrick Lencioni book. I can't remember the title of it, but it's about a CEO that like, a good CEO and a bad CEO, and like the difference between the two.
Interesting. Okay, you're on an island. You can choose one thing to eat, pizza or salad?
Salad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are you a healthy, like to eat healthy? Or
I do. I like vegetables. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I just if I eat too much pizza, then I have a bad morning.
Yeah. Okay. I hear that. Beach or mountains?
Mountains.
Mountains.
Yeah.
So you live in the snow versus the sunshine.
I would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Football or football?
Football.
Football.
Yeah.
Okay. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Funnel cake or cheesecake?
Cheesecake.
Most importantly, the Goonies or I forgot. Oh, Sandlot.
The Goonies. 100%.
The Goonies.
Yeah.
You're the first one that has said the Goonies.
What?
Everyone has said Sandlot.
Oh my gosh.
We even had a controversial person say that both are overrated.
So I made all of my kids watch The Goonies way too early. Yeah, so like that's one of my all-time favorites.
Oh yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
Awesome, Tim. Thanks so much. I'll let you go.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.